Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw. Played 11 seasons for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. Come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey and sometimes cooking, sometimes life events. I had one of those this past week where my sixth grandchild was born in Chicago.
Oh, nice. Congratulations. Wow,
Yeah,
very nice.
Solomon Patrick Allen sounds like a Supreme Court justice or maybe a writer.
Yeah, there you go. Solomon,
But he's ready to go.
Very good. How much do you weigh?
9 pounds. So
Wow, that's pretty big, right?
Yeah, he's a big one. Yeah, no doubt about it. So he was the biggest. That was the fourth child for my son and his wife Elisa, and he was the biggest child thus far. And Elisa, my daughter-in-law, has quick labor. So after the second child, when they barely made it to the hospital, the doctor actually suggested that perhaps they should consider home birth.
Oh,
so they had shifted into that for child 3 and 4, and the third one went smoothly, but this one, the midwife didn't get there in time.
oh.
So she had it so quickly that my son and Elisa just delivered it themselves. So
wow, that's pretty cool. How was it?
well, I mean, it's obviously not their first rodeo, so
right.
they were. I mean, they know what they're doing, essentially. So
Very cool.
And then she just showed up and then checked out the baby and did all the things that you do,
Right.
and then they're ready to go.
So they take the baby into the doctor for a checkup right away, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, they do it right there. They don't go. You don't run to the hospital. I mean, that's the way babies were born forever in the old days. So, but yeah, for sure. I mean, they will have proper medical care. They just didn't. You don't do it in the hospital. So,
right. But it's one thing I got to give both of them credit, though. It's still like, I know he's done it before, but still, it's.
Yeah, for sure. It's not. I can't say that as the grandfather. The first time I heard this was going to happen, that I celebrated and did a jig. I mean, this sounds a little bit scary to me, but they went through it for their third child, and to be honest, I mean, they got to do it. It's like the labor is like an hour, like in Chicago, there's nothing under an hour, you take, you got to go. Yeah. So, and they live right downtown. So
that's pretty cool. That's a great story. I like that.
Yeah, no, it was, we're excited about it. We're in South Carolina now visiting another daughter and her husband. And then we're flying back tonight at 9:00, and then we're getting in the car tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. to drive to Chicago to see our sixth grandchild. So
that's fantastic. You're great. You're great parents, both you and your wife. I know your family means a lot to you. So that's great.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, so we're looking forward to it all. And yesterday, my grandson sat on the couch with his mom and his dad and watched the Lions game. So nice. He's fully acclimated already.
They won yesterday too, right?
Yeah, they did. I don't know. Does it count when you beat up on a really weak Jacksonville team?
Not the NFL. I don't think it matters. I think it does. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think it does for the Lions, who've had a lot of. This is like 5 consecutive weeks where they've looked good. Yeah. They didn't win, like they didn't win on Thanksgiving, but they've looked like a real team as opposed to a Sandlot team. So everybody's kind of excited about the Lions. But, bigger than that was, over the weekend, the University of Michigan, qualified for one of the 4 college playoff teams. They downed Purdue to win the Big Ten champion. But how about Ohio State? Ohio State, loses to Michigan, which is, it's really hard to describe what a devastating loss that is, just because the rivalry is so intense. And they lost, back-to-back times now. They lost last season and this season. Yeah. So, they're down and everything else. And then all the pages turn in the right order for Ohio State to get into the playoffs anyway. So they could end up with a rematch with Michigan. I mean, not likely because Georgia is such a good team. It's Georgia versus Ohio State. But, it's college football. Anything can happen. So
And Michigan's ranked number 3 then, right? So they play.
Yeah, no, Michigan is 2, so they'll play TCU. So, I mean, it's entirely possible that Ohio State and Michigan could both lose in the first game, but it's also possible they could win. So,
that'd be cool.
Wouldn't that be a great rematch? And because playing a team twice,
that's
college
one, right?
sports, for sure.
And anyway, so that was in Michigan. Then the home team is the higher ranked team, or they?
No, you play in the bowl game, so they'll play. I forgot which bowls they're at now. So they each year a different bowl game hosts the semifinals. So
is the Rose Bowl still like the big daddy of all the?
Well, the granddaddy of them all. That's what they used to say. Yeah. I mean, it's still an important bowl game, and but in this case, it's not one of the playoff bowl games. I thought everybody's made fun of Saban because the Alabama coach, because he was lobbying for his team to get in with 2 losses, and that's never happened before. Right. And so everybody was calling him whiny and everything else. But one point he did make in his lobbying efforts is that the playoff system is sort of rendered has taken the shine off the bowl games, and I think there's some validity to that. And what he had suggested is they ought to expand the bowl game or expand the playoffs so that the other bowl games can get involved, and maybe it become then more back the way it was before when every bowl game seemed important. So for whatever that is worth.
So the schools can make more money, the coaches can make more money.
I don't think he needs more money. I think he's probably one of the highest paid coaches going. So
isn't Harbaugh up there too? Isn't Harbaugh like $8 or $9 million a year or something like that?
Yeah, but he ended up taking a pay cut. Like he almost lost his job. Everyone's forgotten about that. But he had a real bad COVID year. I think he was 2-4 or something. Something nutty, 2-3 maybe. I don't know. And then everybody was thinking, well, he wasn't the coach that. And, when you're in these high-profile schools like Ohio State or Michigan or Alabama or Georgia, like 8-3 or maybe even 9-2 is 500. You got to be better than 8-3 or 9-2. That might be good for other schools, but that is not good for those.
And those big-time sports like football, basketball, maybe somewhat hockey. They're important to the school too, right? Because a lot of kids, when they go to a school, they'll say, "Okay, I know I'm going to get academically is good. Now I want to be able to have some fun too, and go to a highly ranked team." So,
I don't know where it is today, but I remember years ago doing a story and where the big money makers is football and sometimes basketball, and hockey was almost kind of a break even proposition because those arenas. They fill up those arenas, but they're small, so it's not like you're, bringing in revenue like a football game and you can charge. Like, I don't know what, Michigan charges for a ticket now. I have no idea. I wouldn't even want to speculate, but it's probably fairly significant, I would assume. And they've got 110,000 tickets to sell. So,
right. All the jerseys and everything they're selling.
Yeah.
So Michigan's at the Fiesta Bowl, OSU's at the Peach Bowl. Thank you very much, Susan.
Leave it to Susan to come up for it. She doesn't even live in Michigan or Ohio or Georgia or any of those.
Research right there. That's what we call that.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, let's talk about the NHL. Last night Kaprizov scored for the 6th consecutive game. He got a goal, and I was thinking about that. And that's like, to me, that's like homering in 6 consecutive games. Because, he was a 47 goal scorer last year, 48. Yeah. So, I mean, that's like a 50 home run hitter. And, but six games in a row getting a goal. And I looked it up just to be sure of this. And, you talk about the impact of scoring. I think we would both agree that Minnesota's start has been kind of ho-hum. Mm-hmm. It was just meh or meh, and they were at 500 a couple of weeks ago. But, since he started scoring, they've won 6 out of their last 7.
Wow.
He's on a 12-point scoring streak as well, so that's like 19 points. now all of a sudden, they're back in the in the central race, looking like they're back to the team they were last season. So, Kaprizov, I think I don't know, am I right or wrong on this, Tom? Don't you think he's a little bit? I mean, people know who he is. I'm not suggesting that, but it seems to me he's one of the more anonymous superstars.
Yes, I agree totally.
Yeah, I mean, because he is he's kind of a magical player. Like, he's got the move and a half that you need to be the star, and he can create something out of nothing. He's got a little abracadabra to his game, I just don't think he gets enough attention for how.
I think something about that team for some reason is just like it doesn't grab your attention. I think that's part of the problem. It's the team.
Yeah, well, I don't know where they are now, but a couple of years ago they were like last in the identity quotient for NHL teams. They didn't sell very many jerseys. They don't really have a national following.
Even in Minnesota, they call it the state of hockey, but it's more for the high school teams, the college teams. It isn't really the pro.
Yeah. When you say, so and so's playing for Minnesota, people think college. They don't think the Wild. So, or maybe they just say the U if you're playing for the U.
Yeah. So even the high school, right? The high school hockey is huge.
High school is big. Like there's no place quite like in terms of high school hockey than Minnesota.
Yeah. So they call it Mr. Hockey. Don't they give it the award every year?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So
I remember my senior year in college, we'd ranked number 1 in the country. We won the Central Collegiate Hockey Association championship, but we had to go play one more game to see who was going to the Final Four, and it was in Minnesota. And thank God that was the year that a lot of the guys had left for the Olympics, so they didn't have quite the team that they would have had when Herb was coaching there. But it was, I remember going there, and it was the whole different feeling, right? That big old the Mariucci Arena. So it was pretty cool. That was a good game. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up because, we always qualify everything in sports, Yeah, we won that year, but, that was the year everybody was hurt or, all that kind of stuff. And, you can only beat the guys that are in front of you.
That's a good point. Yeah.
That's who they were at that time. It's, if everybody had been there, you would have to face that team, but it really didn't.
I remember Timmy Har. Remember in the movie Miracle, Timmy Har? Herb brought up Timmy Har from University of Minnesota to try to scare the rest of the guys near the end of their training, and then send him back down. So he was playing for the University of Minnesota at the time, and we played them and beat him. And that would have been, if we lost, that would have been my last game of college because that was my senior year. I was going to go sign with the Rangers. So I told him before the game started, I told him that if you try to score any goals tonight, it's going to be my last game anyway. So I'm just going to spear your eyes out. And I know. I sitting right in front of the guys of the team, and my team. Well, he might do it. So so he didn't do too much that
game. That's what a world it is.
I know.
It's sports. Yeah. So I find it interesting, and we've talked about this before, but it made me giggle. I was reading about all the people talking about bonds and not getting enough votes to stay on the ballot and so forth, and talking, and one guy just said, I just can't accept cheating of any form in sports. And I'm thinking, and in our sport, and one of the maxims of the sport is if you aren't cheating, you ain't going.
Totally.
So we cheat in the face-off circle. We hack and whack guys outside the bounds of the rules to try to get an advantage. We want to intimidate them. We tell them we're going to spear their eyes out.
Very true.
But I don't know. But there's something different about drugs. And
it's that code. Like, remember one time I said to you that I had total respect for Bob Nystrom, and then next statement I said, "Well, you knocked me out and put me in the hospital one night." It's kind of, you think about it later and you go, "Really?"
Yeah. It's just it is a crazy world. But we talked about Kaprizov's point streak, but there's two others. Robertson and Marner. Both have lengthy streaks. And I saw Jim Matheson from Edmonton, who's covered the league since the days when Edmonton was in the WHA. So he's been around.
Wow.
Yeah. He was just talking about, he told everybody to relax about Marner and Robertson, because he said, they're about not even a third of the way to Wayne Gretzky's record,
Right.
So, but, I think people are a little excited. I did the math this morning for an assignment I'm doing on, both Matthews and Draisaitl are on a 150 point pace. Well, that would be the highest point total that we have, and I don't know whether you can sustain it or not. Usually, it kind of falls off as the games get more important. But if they could, that would harken back to the days when it was 95, 96, or I think so, 95, 96, when Mary Lemieux had 166 points. That's the last big year that we've had like that. So
what was Wayne? He was over 200, wasn't he, Gus?
Oh yeah, but that was in the 80s. He was 215. So
was that what it was? Wow.
Yeah. So
that's incredible. And what was his highest for goals? Was it 70 something for goals?
No, 87.
Oh wow.
For goals. Yeah. So
we kind of forget about the point totals he racked up, like Gretzky. Wow.
Yeah. Well, it was a different league then, but again, just what we were talking about before. Wayne could only compete against the players and the defenses that were in front of him.
Yeah.
You can't just say, well, it was a wide open era. Well, it was the era that Wayne had to deal with, and he was unbelievable.
Well, I know it was wide open, but at the same time, it was also the hooking and holding and everything, the stuff that we could get away with. So it wasn't like it was easy for him. And I hear that, I kind of
I don't know, and you tell me on this because, but it was my impression, and then guys have told me there was more. It got worse as you moved toward the 90s, in 91, 92. In that era, it was really a just struggle to get to the net. The guys were in and holding, and I mean it was too as well in the 80s, but it was worse in the early 90s.
I'd say that's true. Yep.
Yeah. So it was.
I remember Carol Vadnais. He was always teaching me stuff like Tommy. He had the French accent. Tommy, that guy goes to the front of the net. You do whatever you want to do to him, because it was worse if you could do whatever you want to do in front of that.
Yeah. And yet they still scored goals, no matter how much you pounded on those guys.
Definitely. You see in Tempe, Arizona, they're having now it's gone to a vote for this new building that they're going to put up there. So I guess the town council, twice they voted unanimously to approve it, and now it goes to the vote. So
and Gary Bettman said that he would give a 30-year guarantee of not moving that franchise.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess it's quite a facility too. It's more than just the arena. It's apartments, shopping.
Yeah, I mean that's the only. They try to do that now because putting up new arenas is really unpopular with the public now.
Yeah,
we just don't like the cost, and the Coyotes are, paying the bill for the arena. But the problem is the land. That could be really, really costly, and that's what I don't know if it must be the state. I would think it'll be turned down. I mean, most of them are now.
Oh,
so well, I don't really know. But.
Well, I was listening to the NHL radio, and they had on the president of the team. I can't remember his name, and he was saying he thought about, obviously he's prejudice in his direction, but they felt like it would get voted positively, that they would approve it because the town, they feared the town council would not have voted unanimously unless they had kind of had their feel of what the people were thinking. Now that doesn't mean they've talked to everybody in town, but
you got to believe that the Coyotes have done some research here, some marketing research. I mean, we do all kinds of polls for the elections. It wouldn't take too much to put something together. So,
So remember we had that discussion the other day, and it really was bothering me to find out the answer about whether there was a indemnity fee to be paid.
Yeah.
So I did some research. I sent you that article. In that past, it has always been that a fee has been paid, but it's not necessarily a rule or a law, like a bylaw in the CBA or anything like that. It's just something that the league has always said that they wanted to do. In fact, there's some people. There's one lawyer was suggesting that it's against the law for teams in the U.S. anyways to have a rule like that. So that's probably why they haven't had a rule or a law. But it's just been a standard operating procedure. But so there's really no percentage or number and like that. The league just comes up with a number. So.
Yeah, but if the league sees it as, we're not going to do this unless you pay off your neighbors, then it may as well be a law.
Yeah, you're right. But yeah, I guess I think from what I understand is that's why they haven't made it a law because it's against the law.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah,
That
because
makes
the
sense.
Islanders paid $4 million to the Rangers. I think was that the last one? No, the Mighty Ducks were the Ducks would have.
Yeah, the Mighty Ducks. I think that was. I want to say that was $50 million, but I don't know.
Wow.
Let's see.
Yeah.
We can probably Ducks paid the
So I
Kings.
wonder. Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess every team would say, like in Toronto's case, we started the discussion with Toronto. They would say, "Listen, like if Mr. Bettman ever tried to say to them, listen, we're not going to get a fee." They would say, "Well, why wouldn't we get a fee? Everybody else has got one, right?"
Okay, well, according to this, this is the story. Oh, I love how they phrase this too. The Kings paid the Mouse, the Mouse paid the Kings $25 million expansion fee plus $25 million territorial rights to then Kings owner Bruce McNall.
Oh, wow.
So,
Bruce got it. What do I do with that money?
So
Poor
just
Bruce.
think of that though. The expansion fee was $50 million back then, and it's what, $640 million now.
Yeah. Oh,
So
wow.
that was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It's that says a lot about the escalation of financial situations in our country, but also the value of franchises has rocketed.
Yeah. No kidding.
So,
well, I think the Rangers are $2 billion now, north of $2 billion. So
yeah. Well, I mean, you really need. I mean, we've talked about this before, but you need to have 2 billionaires to buy a NFL team now. Like one billionaire, you can't afford to finance it. You got to have a second one. So
yeah. I think in the past, in the NHL, anyways, you can only finance up to 50% of the value of the team. Although that has been again, that's another one of those things that sometimes, depending on the individual, they'll let that slide. But
yeah, interesting. All right. Well, just getting back to Marner. I wanted to bring up the Red Wings played a game, and I thought it was interesting that a guy on the all-Laidlaw team and a guy on the anti-Laidlaw team both scored in that game. Jack Eichel and Phil Kessel. So Kessel scored on a breakaway. You know what I enjoyed about watching that? You can always tell sort of where a player's confidence is at when he's in on a breakaway.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, because of what they do with the puck. And, I remember when Alexander Daig was just struggling that I almost fell out of my chair in the press box that he fired a puck on a breakaway from about 40 feet. And I'm going, like, what is that all about? But with Kessel, it doesn't quite work the same way because you want guys going in and, with a bob of the head and everything else. But Kessel, he came out of the penalty box and he got in and he was probably, 15 or 18 feet out. And he just took the quickest shot I have ever seen. And it was sizzling when it went into the net. And you could just see, he's a goal scorer. Like that goalie wasn't ready. Phil knew he wasn't ready and he fired, and puck was in the net, I
can see him right. Cool. He probably didn't even celebrate either, right? He probably just skated right to the bench.
No, of course not.
Yeah,
he doesn't have a lot of goals.
One breakaway in my career came out of the penalty box, Madison Square Garden. I believe it was against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I was so determined to make sure I hit the net, I shot it right into the goalie's chest.
Well, when you only get one in your career, I think it is important that you get it on frame.
Yeah, definitely. You don't want to say you missed that. You don't want to say you missed that. That's right. Danny Erickson was there for the penalty. I forgot about that. Yes.
Wow, that's funny.
I remember coming back to the bench and the guys were just like, "We're gonna warm him up, Tom. Nice warm up shot." Oh, God.
Well, the other thing too is that I usually have to do my civic duty to remind people. The one thing you always hear the fans lament is how often players shoot wide, and I always like to remind people it's because they're trying to pick a corner that's about 4 inches by 2 inches. So, if it goes a little high, it's not like they're just trying to get it on the frame. They're really shooting at a mail slot is what they're trying to put it in.
Yeah, you do with these goalies now with the equipment they have and everything. If you go down on a breakaway and looking at the goalie, there's nothing to shoot at.
Yeah. Although I would say this, scoring is up significantly this year again. We're at I think it's 3.19. So that's 6.4 goals per game now.
Right.
And it's the highest level in 30 some years. And
wow.
You remember it's just a few years ago, we were talking about expanding the size of the net.
Yeah.
We were talking about shrinking the goalie clothes, the jersey.
So why do you think it's up then? Do you think it's bad defense or good offense?
No, I think it's the players that are just honing their skills. It's speed now. It's a fast game, so you got to think quickly. So defenders, get caught more than they did in the past. I mean, when it's just amazing how fast the puck transitions down the ice now. He goes into the zone and then snap. 2-3 passes and suddenly you're down in the other end firing a shot on goal. So,
and even the goalies, it doesn't even have to be a defenseman. The goalies now can use the puck so well.
Yeah. I mean, even athletes in general. Like I don't know if you've watched any of the World Cup, probably not, but just the skill level. That's 11v11. So these guys, come down the field. And again, it's the same thing. There's a shot on goal. The goalkeeper, passes it out to like an outlet fullback who then moves it up, and they're coming down, and it's like symphonic the way they move the ball around.
Yeah,
it's just suddenly.
That's a great word, symphonic. That's
well.
Did you make that up? Did you make that up?
And then they what I love is, I played some when I was an adult in the adult leagues, but I didn't play when I was a kid or anything. But my wife is a coach, and my son played college soccer, so I watched a lot of it. And they call it slotting. Their ability to slot a pass between things and just sort of lead it out front, and then the guy runs under it, and it's just remarkable. Like you're watching that, and then suddenly it seems like it looks like Tokyo at rush hour with all the players. And then all of a sudden one guy is in alone. And you're going, what the heck? So
that's pretty good. Tokyo at rush hour. That's good. I like that one. Yeah. Thanks.
So anyway, it's just, it's really kind of phenomenal. I just marvel at the athleticism of people and the strategy, but those guys, in Canada, you guys always have, in the wintertime, a puck, on a stick, and in Argentina and Brazil and Germany and France, they're always got a soccer ball in their foot. So.
Well, it's interesting. I was lucky to play with Phil Esposito and Wayne Gretzky, and both those guys talk about how they learn more from playing out in the pond with their buddies than any place else. Just figuring it out, giving goes, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I remember early in my career doing a story on baseball about prospects. I was out in Arizona covering Central Arizona College, and they had a bunch of people drafted, and I ended up talking to a scout, and that was at the time. It's just really dating me because it was the late 70s. But they were just starting to. Every team was starting to get or every city was starting to get well manicured fields, and the scouts were all grousing and lamenting that the players they were scouting the younger players don't have the instincts for bad fields. Like, he said, if you watch a guy when there's going to be a bad hop, like they sense it before it happens. Like if you're a shortstop, you're down on the ball, and all of a sudden you see them, they're starting to come up even before the ball does, because they just sense they've played enough on bad fields that they kind of know what a ball's going to do, just sort of like reading a putt or reading what's going to happen. And I remember them saying is that because a lot of players now, grow up in well-manicured fields, they don't have the same sense of when something bad was going to happen on the field. So, and it's the same thing in pond hockey. The ice is not perfect out there when you're out on a lake. And so sometimes it bounces over your stick, but when, if you've got great hands, you can sort of anticipate that.
Yeah.
And, so.
I didn't see this play, Susan, but she's on the ball here. Not just continue Saturday. Trouba threw 2 clean, hard hits against jump both times. Yeah, that trend in the National Hockey League to me has got to go. But again, so what Susan's talking about there is Trouba, who's a big hitter. It seems now whenever you get a big hit, even if it's a clean hit on somebody, the team that got hit feels they need to jump in and do something right away, which I think is a stupid play, because now usually you'll get the instigator penalty and hurt your hockey team. So I understand why they think they need to do it, but again, in the past, and I think the way it should be done now is you wait, talk to the player all game long. Scare me. I think it's a tactic that you could use for the whole game. So the guy that makes the big hit, you're constantly on him all game long. You're going to get it, and then do it later on in the game if the scorer.
I don't get that. I've never liked that you have to pay a price for delivering an illegal hit. Yeah. I think that's absurd. And I don't get it. Now, to be honest with you, I did not see the hit. I would say that some people that I respect have said on Twitter that it was dirty. Now, I don't know. I didn't see it, but I do agree with you completely that that's part of the game I don't like. Like if you deliver a clean hit within the rules, let's play on. Yeah, and if you feel like you want to get them back, okay, that's a good team play, but you do it at the right time, either late in the game when you're up by goals or they're up by a few goals. Get them back if you want, or even get them back next game. You have a long memory. Like even if it's a bad hit too, even if it's a dirty hit, like again, you're going to, in all likelihood, you will take the extra penalty as the instigator. You're better off just waiting and talk to them all game long. Say, I'm coming to get you. I'm coming to get you. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the way they did. I mean, Gordie Howe would wait years, literally years, to pay back.
Yeah. Do you imagine Gordie Howe telling you, I'm going to get you back in those days? And then you have to wait.
Yeah.
You have to wait. So every game you're playing against him, you're going, oh, God, here it comes.
I told this story just not long ago when I said the late Stan Mikita told me that, everybody told him that, Howe was going to get him for what he did to him, because Stan Mikita early in his career he ended up winning Lady Byng, but he was a nasty player.
Yeah,
supposedly. Now that was even before my time, but and like it was like I think he told me 4 or 5 years later, Howe ran him over, and as Mikita was laying there, he said, "We're even." So we're even, and Mikita actually had to think about it. He goes, "Well, yeah, that was 4 or 5 years ago when I,
That's pretty good." Imagine back in those days too, where there was only 6 teams, and they like those star players like that, like they practically like their brothers. I guess we never talked to each other, but yeah.
Well, you could keep a notebook, but it was a small notebook, of all the, people. So that's interesting. I saw somebody. Who was it? Actually, it might have been a prospect. Oh yeah, someone asked him. I asked a defenseman whether or not he studies the goaltenders, and he goes, "Oh no, I study the forwards." And I don't know that I've ever heard of that. Is there anybody that keeps like notebooks about what forwards do, or is that just a baseball thing? So
I don't want to say it's actually a notebook, but like certain players have certain things that they do out on the ice. I'll never forget James Patrick had been in the Olympics, and I guess Kevin Dineen was with Hartford at the time, and he'd been in the U.S. team. And we were playing against Kevin against Hartford, and James said to me, he said, "Watch Dineen. He's got this certain move that he used. I can't remember what the move was." And my arrogant self kind of like, I don't care what kind of move he's got. I'm going to stop him. So he did exactly what James had told me he was going to do and went around me. So, I mean, little things like that, you're more remind guys, especially younger guys, hey, watch this guy. This is what he does. But, I was really lucky on Saturday. Sorry, I got to go to the Special Olympics event at Jacob Javits Convention Center in Manhattan. So it was they had a floor hockey. It's interesting because they don't want kids getting hurt. It was basically ring hockey. They took just a stick and a ring, but it was fantastic. We got to give out the awards. I was with 4 police officers from NYPD, and the kids were unbelievable. We gave out awards for a couple of hours, and time flew by because these kids were having so much fun. So it was a real honor to get to go there.
Yeah, great photos. If you're on Tom's Facebook, check those out. So
of course, this one girl, she was funny. She was dancing up there. So we're up on stage, and she wanted me to dance with her up on stage after she won her award. She was so excited. So I got up on stage. She was dancing. It's not pretty. My dancing is not pretty.
Yeah. Just getting back to the hockey world. What is your take on what's going on with the Rangers? It's doesn't seem to be getting better.
No, it doesn't. Well, I think last year, listen, they played well. I mean, people like Kreider had 52 goals, I think it was. But Shesterkin was just unbelievable. There's many games that he just stole games for them, and even some games, they shouldn't have been in the game. I remember one game in Toronto early in the year last year. He was incredible, and he has not played as well this year. So I think it's a combination of him not bailing them out when they make the mistakes. And I think they just don't have the confidence. So they're designed, and the coach lets them do this, to go. Like, go score goals, take chances, score goals. We got a great goaltender back there. It's designed for that. I think now they're saying, well, we don't have the great goaltender back there right now, so they're not playing as hard offensively as they had been. So I think it's a combination of them pulling back. And what they should do is, well, first of all, Shesterkin should get going and playing the way he can, and the team has to just continue to play the way they're designed to play. They're not designed to be that defensive hockey team like the old New Jersey Devils used to be. They are designed to go, and they need to go.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter Larry Brooks, who's always has his fingers on the pulse of the Rangers, said that he just saw no flicker of life in them right now. They're just he said man to man, they just everyone seems to be a bit down about it all. Yeah. So that's never good.
Yeah. Once you start losing the room. So I guess now speculation is that something happened to Gerard Gallant as a coach. I don't think that's the answer. He was the same coach last year that he was this year. He lets the team play the same way that they have last year. So I don't think that's an answer, but it doesn't always matter if it's the answer or not. Sometimes you feel like you have to do something, right? So.
But, I guess the argument, and I don't know that this is the answer either, but the argument would have been that, last year, everyone had a false sense of who the Rangers were because Shesterkin was so darn good.
Yeah.
So.
And that's the thing, because these young kids they've got, like, Kako isn't really doing too much. I thought Lafreniere would do more. I like Hedl. They've broken up the pairings. Keanu Miller was with Trouba. They've split up that pair now too, so they're trying to do different things. It is a tough one. You don't have life like that. And I think it's part of it still goes back to, and I like Vincent Trouba a lot, tremendous player, but they named him captain. And I wonder whether he really is truly. I don't view him as captain material as far as being that personality, speaking in the locker room and everything, and speaking in front of the media. As a player, he's a tremendous leader. He makes the big hits all the time. He's trying to get things going. I love him as a player, but the answer then is, or I guess the question then is, who would be captain? I just don't think they've got a personality on that team that stands up there just says enough's enough, guys. We've got to get going. I just don't see that. Again, a bunch of great players and good personalities. But I don't see that fiery person to stand up in the locker room right now.
Yeah, this is a very talented Rangers team. Yeah. I like the talent level of the defense. Yeah. But I think they sort of probably do need someone who can, kind of get them reorganized.
Yeah. For somebody just to get mad and say, and I hate to say this, it's going to sound a little bit barbaric, but somebody say, okay, enough's enough at practice, and say, okay, if we don't get going, I'm going to go nuts here, start running people in practice. I know that you don't want to hurt your own teammates, but it's something to get that fire going, to say, okay, enough is enough. I almost feel like they're just such good guys that they just don't want to stir the pot, right? They don't want to be the guy that steps up. That's
Well, it's a mystery how, and it's all the psychology of it all, how teams that play with such confidence, 1 month suddenly look like completely different teams. In the case of the Rangers, they played so confidently last season, and now they're not. And as you said, relatively the same team. In fact, you can argue they upgraded. Trocheck's a good player.
The young kids should have gotten better. Another year under the belt. Yeah. Especially after that front last year too.
What's your honest assessment of Capo? Just watching his ability, I think he's an NHL player. I just don't think he's a scorer.
I think he's got potential. I think you're probably right. Probably like a 25, 30 goal scorer in a good year. But he's that big-bodied forward too that can really create things. Him and Hedl are the same way. I just see him as total lack of confidence.
I don't know. I don't see that he's got that 25 to 30 goals in him. So I think on a real good year he might eke out to 20. But thus far, I haven't seen the scoring instincts that I thought. I see it in Lafreniere,
Yeah.
You know,
I just think with Kako, again, he's just, you watch his skill level. I remember it was 2 years ago, whatever it is, when they started training camp. I was over at the training facility. I was standing with Mike Barnett actually, and we were watching him. He actually stayed after practice and was doing some tremendous things to help himself score goals. And we're all marveling, like, "Well, that's pretty cool." This young kid choosing himself to stay out after practice and do extra stuff. But I just don't. Again, I think it's between the ears with him. He just doesn't. I don't think he doesn't believe in himself. Like, he won't make those moves. Like, he's afraid to make a mistake out there. And I don't think that's the coaches, because Gallant is the opposite of that. He wants guys to try to make plays.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think Capo can have value on a team. I just think it might be one of those things where he ends up on a second team. Suddenly he's the third line, as a top 9 guy instead of a top 6 guy. Like, he could be very valuable, but he needs to get back on that, just in terms of getting confidence.
So Anthony brings up Halak. Again, I don't think that's the issue, though. The issue is Shesterkin. He's just not that all-world goaltender that he was. Now, that's kind of unfair to him, but that's who he showed that's who he could be, is an all-world goaltender, and he's not an all-world goaltender, which kind of surprises me, because I just thought, okay, I can see he had a couple of bad games against Pittsburgh in the playoffs last year, but he got back going again, and maybe he had a bad goal here or there, but he seemed to hold it together. It's just, to me, from the start of the year, he has had some good games, but not nearly the games he had last year.
Yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate everyone tuning in. It's Monday. We'll be back on Wednesday. If you want to read me, I'm at DetroitHockeyNow.com.
Great to see you again, everybody. We will see you again on Wednesday.